Good afternoon, Precision Camera viewers. Welcome to Facebook Live. Today's topic, how to get your kids interested in photography. My name's Ian and I'll be giving you some ideas, hopefully useful ones, that you can employ to bring the kids on board. Maybe you like to take pictures, maybe it's the passion in your life that you are a photographer and that's your main thing. Maybe your kids are getting curious, but you're stuck at home. So let's face it, we're all looking for options here, and photography can definitely be one of those things that's a good way to spend time getting to know each other, having fun, and we're just going to talk about a few tips, tricks, and ways to get this thing rolling in the household without turning it into a huge ordeal. You may have a lot of different family members, different ages, and we're going to try to address that too. Since, you know, different younger people have different interests. The thing about photography is that it's a lot about how you look at the world. It's a lot about your perception. And it's not even necessarily about the subject matter. I mean, that certainly makes a difference. But what I think is really fantastic is when we have the opportunity to turn our cameras towards some really ordinary things and make some really exciting photographs. So when you're thinking about strategies, remember, you and your children may see things in a very different way, and it's a really good idea to leave them the opportunity to explore with the camera, if you know what I mean. In other words, I probably wouldn't get into the argument of telling your children that this is a good or bad idea to take pictures of this thing, you know, certain material excluded. But let them wander and enjoy and make the most of the experience, especially if they're very young. Now, I might be talking about cameras a little bit today, and that may worry some of you because, well, photographic gear can be intimidating. So I'm not going to go off the deep end on the technical side, but I want to give you guys a clue as to how to figure things out. So you might have a camera in your household, like one of these little compacts or even one of these interchangeable lens SLR/mirrorless type cameras. I mean, these are my favorite, but these work great when it comes to kids and just having a good time. But a lot of people panic because they don't know how to use all the buttons, and they figure they need to read the whole owner's guide in order for things to make sense. Well, let me give you a little tip. I'm going to show you something that I wrote that might help you search. And when you can't find a mode, Google's your friend. If you can Google, then you can pretty much look up any camera mode there is. And the way you do it is you type into a Google search the words how to plus the feature of the camera you're trying to work with plus the name of your camera. Okay, now cameras have a lot of different names. So if you're confused about what you own, flip it over and the model number is going to be right on the bottom. Okay, like this is a Canon EOS Rebel SL1. It's badged on the front, SLRs. These type cameras, it's usually easy to tell. But if you have a compact, you might be looking at it and it says Lumix or PowerShot or something, and you can't figure out the model number. It's on the bottom. Okay, so go ahead and flip it over. Knowing the name of your camera is essential. Okay, but type that into Google, how to, and then you'd say which feature you're trying to set, plus the name of the camera, or this is a thing I do all the time when you guys call the store and you don't know how to do something. I type in owner's guide plus the name of the camera plus PDF. And what that does is it gets me to a place where I can pull up the entire owner's guide in PDF, and then I can basically look up any feature or function right through the owner's guide. Every manufacturer puts their owner's guide online. In fact, most companies don't even put a book in the box anymore. So first off, if you're worried about, well, I don't know how to turn the thing on or where those features are you mentioned, that's how you find them. Use Google, okay? Maybe you have the guide, great. But if you don't, a search engine's going to help. Okay, now a few basics. You're going to want to do a few things, get rolling. Number one, charge the battery. Maybe 6 months since you used the thing last time. Plug it in and charge it. Now, some of these have an onboard charger. They come with a cord. And in some cases, you take the battery out and you put it on an external charger and it plugs into the wall. Second, make sure there's a memory card in it. Now, memory cards are these little things here. Okay, See if you can see. This is an SD card. About 98% of the cameras on the market use SD cards now. And make sure you've got one of these. We've got them. If you don't, you can order them online. Get a 32 gig at least, and that'll hold, you know, a few thousand pictures. These are reusable, but they get lost, so make sure you got that before you get rolling. Okay, and then put the camera in auto mode. Now, on this Canon camera, auto is a little A. Sometimes a camera like this, it's IA. But auto mode is basically the setting you want to use to get started, or no flash auto. Now, these are basically equivalent, with the exception of the fact that no flash auto prevents the flash on the top of the camera from popping up and going off. So I like that a lot for simplicity, because sometimes you don't want the flash, and you can't get rid of it unless you know how to do that. Okay, that's particularly true for this style camera. Now, zooming right here on the SLR, and on the compact camera, zooming is usually this little pivot right under the shutter button. Okay, there's a little thing here that zooms back and forth. And then playback. You're going to want to know where playback is, because the kids are going to want to see the pictures as soon as they shoot them. So you look for the little blue arrow, and you hit that, and it'll bring the image up on the screen that was last taken. Okay, so that's your checklist. Charge the battery, make sure there's a card in it, stick it in auto mode, make sure you can zoom it, and then know where the playback and delete. Oh, and taking the picture, I almost forgot. That's the shutter button right there. So you're going to press that button, and it's going to click the camera and take a photo. Have to take the lens cap off for that. But you'll hear that click on an SLR. On these compacts, sometimes they don't make any noise at all. Now, I know your camera has a lot of modes and features above and beyond that, but here's the thing. When people are getting involved in photography, there's learning cameras, and then there's picture taking. So if we want this to be fun and exciting for a young person, probably we want to keep it easy and basic and just let them learn the camera a little later or as they go. Otherwise, it turns into a project about playing with cameras, which might be fun, but really taking the picture is the thing we want to get them interested in. So what are we going to do at the stage when we're ready to go and the camera is ready to shoot? Well, I mentioned exploring the world. Now, I would say if you have a child between the age of, say, 2 to 6 years, you're probably going to be more inclined to want to let them handle one of these compacts, or maybe even your mobile device if you're comfortable with that. I probably wouldn't set up a small child with an SLR unless you're standing right next to them or you're very confident that they're mature enough to handle it. They're a little bigger and heavier, and they can be hard to operate with really small hands. This one's pretty compact. This is a really neat little Rebel, but some of them can be big and awkward. So depending on what you own, if you have the compact, that may be better for the smaller child. But it's really not about difficulty. These cameras are no harder to shoot than these cameras, truth be told, because most of them, they both have auto. They're going to work about the same. Now, getting involved in the what we're going to photograph or the process is really the trick. So I would keep it very basic in that regard as well. You got it in auto mode. Let's go around the house and photograph colorful things. Let's say I want to photograph everything in the house that's red. Well, a 2 to 4 year old is going to get into that kind of thing because they're going to start identifying colors, and before you know it, everything in your household that's that color is going to be photographed, and you'll have a document for the ages of every red thing in your house. Now, to you, that may not seem like a very sophisticated thing to do in photography or very artful, but to a young kid, that might be just the thing to get them excited. Or you might say, let's take a picture of all the animals, and they've got like stuffed animal toys, they've got pictures of animals, you've got pets. So it's a good idea to make it a little bit task-oriented, but keep it fun at the same time. That age group tends to gravitate to things like that because it may seem a little repetitive to you, but it's going to be more fun to them. And it's not going to frustrate them because they understand exactly what it is they're trying to capture. And they may have a little difficulty handling the camera at first. So when you hand them a camera, or I should say before you hand them the camera, you should probably take some pictures and let them watch you. In other words, let them watch your hands and how your hands are holding the camera, And then when you hand it to them, tell them to be careful and treat it nice, because some kids get excited, they toss these things around like they're toys. Your camera's probably not going to make it if that's the case. So be gentle and treat the camera such, and probably the child will have no problem. You'll get a lot of really low angle shots, you'll get a lot of really funny pictures, but I think it's really important while that process is going on that you stick close by, at least the first time, and just let them go. You don't have to interrupt them or explain a whole lot. Just see what they can do. I think that's probably the best way to handle the very younger kids, because their brains are very creative, they're full of imagination, they want to get out and explore the house. You have to stop them generally. So this is a way to give them something to do while they're wandering around. The other thing you could do is set up something a little more advanced. Maybe if the child's a little older, you can say, well, like the movie Toy Story, well, they can make their own Toy Story. They can take their own toys, set them up in a creative way, take pictures, make a little story about it, and create their own narrative. I mean, that may take a little more time, that may be a little more involved, but if the kid's committed to taking pictures and seems excited about that prospect, well, there you go. And they can kind of relate to that if you call it, Toy Story or something. We're not affiliated with Disney in any way. It's just an idea for a project. There's a lot of different approaches to this, but overall, I would probably say when you get a very young child involved in photography, they're going to want to steer the ship. And the best thing to do is stick close by and just be there to help and advise, okay? Now, you got a slightly older child, somewhere between 8 and 12, maybe even a little older than that. You may have a lot more to talk about in terms of what they want to do with the camera. They've grown up with photo taking, they've seen you do it. They want to do something a little more advanced, a little more creative. Maybe try silly family portrait time. Get together and make the most ridiculous family portrait imaginable. Set the camera on a tripod if you've got one. Or recreate something from a photograph book or magazine. So I see a lot of people going online now making photos on social media based on Renaissance art or something that they saw in a book. And they're basically copying the format of the image one for one and creating something that almost matches costuming, lighting. There's a lot to get involved with. Some of them are very basic and some are very sophisticated, but I keep seeing these come up on Instagram, and that's a pretty cool way to take an afternoon and make some interesting photographs. You could tell them to set up a dramatic scene that tells a story, or create a narrative of their own, told by pictures. And we're going to post in our Facebook page, or our Facebook feed rather, a photo scavenger hunt, something that you can pull off by giving them a list of things to go around and photograph. We put this together for a couple different age groups, so it'll be in the feed, and you guys can pull that off our site and look at that, and it'll be on our landing page as well. But the idea is there you have a list, and you can go around your household. Hopefully there's enough common things there that everybody will have an opportunity to find something. Maybe somebody can use the real regular camera, and other people can use a mobile device if they need to. But it's a way to keep things moving along without it becoming a lesson about taking pictures, and the idea here again is we want to have fun with it, get the kids involved in photography. Well, giving them a task like that, that's going to anchor them in something that's going to last a while too. There's a possibility make a photo diary. I mean, it's a tougher thing, and I think that takes an age group, I'd say between 12 to 15 and up, because a very young kid's not going to want to take pictures and tell their life story necessarily. But if they find enough interesting things to photograph day to day, they can make their own little storybook, a photo diary, something that they can have about the time they were, locked in the house with this terrible virus and all the things that they did. But hopefully stories that help relate back to this experience, maybe something that helps them explore how they're feeling. It may be a little heavier, but that may be a good way to use the camera, to allow them to explore this experience that's going on right now with everybody. And you know, there's what I do with my wife and I. We generally post things online that are basically video recipe how-tos. And our site's called Yes More Please. It's yes-moreplease.com, but it's a cooking blog. Now, we've spent a whole lot of time and energy like setting it up so it's all professional, but I mean, if you get a good camera and some good setups, you can do some food photography of your own, maybe do a step-by-step thing of how to make a recipe, something that you and your kids can do together, very hands-on. Somebody can cook, somebody can take the pictures, and if you put enough of those in a row, basically you have instructions and maybe something you can post on social media yourself. Now, sharing images is going to be, you know, pretty much something I'll get to in a minute, but the good news is a lot of these cameras can go right to a mobile device. So we'll get to that in a minute, but those are just some ideas about topics and things you can do. Now, when you're taking pictures, the other thing is light can be a lot of fun to play with. But overall, you're going to get the best quality of image shooting with something as much like daylight as possible. So as far as I'm concerned, the best way to go about setting up photos is near a window. The brightest window in your home, the one that lets in the most light. If you set things up there, the camera's going to produce images that are probably the best. And you can play with drapery and see what the effect is of using, you know, a curtain or something. But, you know, especially on a cloudy day, you get a really nice soft light quality. You may not be some sort of professional lighting photographer, but light is a big component of this. And if you go to the darkest corner of your home where there's basically no light, you're not going to be able to get anything other than kind of grainy, blurry pictures. Now, as far as color and balancing exposure and all those things, those are definitely things older kids can get into. And if you have the knowledge and wherefore to teach them aperture and shutter and manual exposure, and you think that they can handle that, that may be a topic you want to get into. But I would say, you know, as far as the kind of things I'm thinking of just for fun and approachability, I wouldn't start with that. Usually those are kind of a little less exciting, let's just say, unless somebody's really inclined to want to learn the technical side of things. Now, if you want to experiment with like making pictures that are kind of technically different, it might be a good idea not to shoot with good light. Now, if you shut the flash off on your camera and go to a place in your home that's not as well lit, or even a darkened room where you can still kind of see but it's not real bright, you can play with motion blur. Now, motion blur doesn't sound like something that would produce good photos, and technically they're not going to have a lot of detail, but they might be kind of interesting and different. And the other thing you can do is you can take your mobile device, and when you're shooting in a dark place, you can use it to write in the air and wave it around. You'll get blurry things, you'll get colors and lines. It'll be something a little different and something that might excite kids of any age, really. Because these are the things you were taught, this isn't something that I'd want to photograph. Well, we're really just playing with light at that point. And as far as what makes photos look good or different, light's a major factor. So think about that. What can you do with the lights in your house? Where are the windows? What part of your house is the brightest? And maybe even go in the dark and do some crazy things with the mobile phone or some flashlights. There's so many different kinds of things you can do, even without the ability to leave your house and go out into a place that you would normally associate with interesting photos. And I did some search on the web and I found a whole lot of other things too. So, I mean, there's really no end to what's possible. But I think one of the things that I would consider doing at the end, once you get some photos, make sure you put them on the computer. Or if you have a nice tablet, I mean, that's the same, laptop, what have you. But the idea is get them on something that has a bigger screen than the 3 inches on this thing, okay? Because in the end, it'd be nice to take all the images and maybe get together as a family and talk about what they've got. Or maybe that child wants to keep it private and they're not big into showing it off. Well, fair enough. But there's something about seeing the images in series that sometimes makes them more meaningful or more exciting, or like with the scavenger hunt, just a way to look everything over. So it may not occur to you that that's really important, but a lot of people, they have photos on this, and then they put the photos on a phone, and you haven't seen it any bigger than about 3 to 4 inches. So really, to explore photography at that scale is kind of dull when you think about it. If you have a nice monitor, get them on the computer, save them, put them on a monitor. You can do slideshows that way. If you get the right cord, there's an HDMI hookup on most cameras, and then you can do a slideshow on your flat screen. Or excuse me, if you check on your TV, you may have a slot for a memory card. And if so, just pull the card out of the camera and pop it in there, and you can do a slideshow directly without any cables. So with different mobile devices and different flat screens on the market, there's a lot of possibility you can share the images on large scale, which is fun. And that's not to mention video. I haven't even talked about that. This is mainly geared to the idea that the kids want to learn to take pictures or start taking pictures. But if they're pushing hard enough, they're going to ask you about video. Most of these cameras shoot video too. And if you want to experiment and go around the house and do some basic video stuff or make some funny skits and record them, hey, there's another way to pass the time. So photography/videography opens up even more possibilities. And you don't need real sophisticated equipment. If you don't have a camera of your own, a Precision Camera obviously has a lot to offer. And we have a lot of really good pre-owned cameras. This particular one came out of our used case, costs a little over $200, has interchangeable lenses. So it's the real deal, and we have lots and lots of these. So if you're interested, you can get in touch with us, and we can help you find something that might work for you if you don't already have a camera that you like, or one that you think your kids would enjoy, or one that you like but you don't want your kids to enjoy. I guess that's another way to say that. So lots of possibilities in the realm of photographing. I would hope that maybe gives you some sort of starting point, but don't feel anchored to any particular idea. If the kid starts steering you away from the idea you've pitched them, and you know how that works, let them run with it. I mean, that's the creative aspect of photography. Don't snuff it out and say, yeah, we got to do what the guy on Facebook said. Go a different direction. Let them go off to a different tangent, as long as it's safe and okay with you and doesn't involve, destroying your household. Hey, it could be a lot of fun. And inspired children are really the greatest thing in the world in terms of creativity. You can't find more inspiration and creativity than in a kid. So get out there and start. Remember, our Facebook feed has our link to the scavenger hunt, and I think that would be a lot of fun. If nothing else, try that. And I'm Ian. You can contact me at Precision Camera, and I'll be more than happy to talk with you about cameras or maybe some different ideas if you get stuck. But I work in the sales department. Excuse me, when I'm not around, I have a lot of friends that work there that know a whole lot about taking pictures. So I'm sure we can get you the help you need and or the equipment required if you feel like you want to try something a little different. Believe me, we still have plenty of merchandise in stock, and we get more every day. So I hope that gives you guys a good start, and thanks for tuning into our Facebook feed here at Precision Camera. Our website is www.precision-camera.com, and my email is imcenroe, like the tennis player, IMCENROE @precision-camera.com. Shoot me an email and I'll try to respond. And thanks a lot. Have a great afternoon. Take care of yourself. Stay healthy. Wash your hands. 6 feet distance.